Today I am in Imber, which is an abandoned village near Salisbury in Wiltshire. During World War II in 1943, the residents of Imber were told to abandon their village by the Ministry of Defence, and they were also told that they'd be given their houses back straight after the war, but that never happened. And even today, the village of Imber is abandoned and is a Ministry of Defence firing range. So you can only visit here on a few select weeks of the year. So come and join me on a tour of Imber, the abandoned ghost village of Wiltshire. Today, the lost village of Imber still sits on a remote part of Salisbury Plain, which is over 94,000 acres and the UK's largest military training ground. So entry is only permitted on certain days of the year, and these are usually around April, in summer in August, and Christmas time. You can either get the Imber bus from Warminster or drive there yourself. The first building I would recommend visiting is the medieval St Giles Church, which is the only building in the village that has not been abandoned. The Friends of St Giles will be there to welcome you, and there's lots of exhibits about the history of Imber, as well as a cosy cafe where you can grab a coffee or tea and some biscuits. As well as the inside of the church being beautiful, I would also recommend visiting the Churchyard, as it's surrounded by the rolling hills of Salisbury Plain, and it just is a gorgeous building to admire. You can take the route around, but be careful as there are a lot of potholes on the grass. The Friends of St Giles do have audio guide tours that you can hire, or you can just walk around the village self-guided to see all the abandoned buildings, and I'll put a map of what the village looks like from above here. Of course, it's always good to remember that you are walking on a military training ground, and so there are lots of warning signs about where you can and cannot enter. One of the buildings that you'll see is the impressive Imber Court, and although it doesn't look like much now, before it used to be one of the largest houses of the estate. The lords of the manor here used to hold lots of social events for the villagers, like parties and barbecues, but now it remains a shell and is shuttered off due to shell damage from the ministry. A little further down the road we have the Bell Inn, which was Imber's pub. A little known fact is that they actually renewed their pub licence until well into the 1960s, thinking that they'd be able to return. Imber actually has two churches, and you can see the remains of the Baptist church behind the Bell Inn, and it's mainly just a graveyard now. And you may notice a lot of modern buildings that are here that almost look like a residential estate. These are actually used by the army today to train in urban warfare situations. On the east side of the village, you have Seagrams Farm, which was rented by the Deans, who were the lord of the manor, and they used to hold cricket matches and tennis games here for the villagers. Of course, you cannot enter any of Imber's abandoned buildings, but you can have a look from the outside. If you peer into one of the windows, you can see what they look like inside, and there really isn't much, and they're quite small compared to what you'd think from the outside. And lastly, we have the Nags Cottage, which gets its name from being a second pub in Imber, but it shut down way before it was evacuated. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for the residents of Imber, who were given only 47 days notice to evacuate their livelihoods and home, and given nowhere to go. They were promised that they could return to their homes after the war, but this never happened. There were huge inquiries, public protests, and the challenges were even brought to the House of Lords, but to no avail. The Ministry of Defence permanently took over Imber. Today, most of the Imber residents have passed on, and the oldest is 96, who was only 6 years old when he was told to evacuate. Imber is such a thought-provoking place to visit, and I would highly recommend it because it keeps Imber's story alive. If you would like to visit Imber on an open day, then you just need to have a look at announcements for when this will be. Personally, I followed their Facebook page and just had a look at when they're going to be open for the year. As the MOD can change the dates at any time, it's best to get the latest updates via social media. Thank you for watching this video on the lost village of Imber. I hope that we can visit for many years to come.